Hey guys, today I'm going to be making a video that I'm really excited about. It's one of those type of comic booky videos that I used to watch all the times as a kid, and that's going to be my top 5 series from each publisher, DC, Marvel. I'll just group independent together. So top 5 series from all of those. I'm making that video because, I used to watch those videos all the time as a kid, right? And I used to love them, but as I started reading comics, I was following these lists and I didn't agree with them. You know, one of the first books I read was Civil War, and they said you need to read Civil War so that you would read a ton of characters and you would get to pick which one you liked better. So I did that, and I read Civil War, and I just kind of felt like none of the characters were acting like themselves. And they just did things in order for the story to progress. That's just my opinion. I look back on those lists now and I don't agree with what they say for these new readers to read. I think, they only pick Blockbuster Comics, which are great, but I think you need more of a foundation in order to truly appreciate those comics. So, for any new readers wanting to get into X-Men, I would definitely suggest this book right here, Wolverine the X-Men by Jason Aaron. This was my first X-Men book. It's a really fun read, really great art. Bradshaw's art is amazing. Pacello's is just kind of, interesting, kind of middle of the road. Each volume in this book is very interesting. There's a story where they go to, they have to fight these crazy clowns. There's a story where Logan goes gambling in outer space. There's a story where the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants attack the school, but they're kids, and there's a ton of really interesting stories in here. I had a lot of fun with this series, and I would definitely recommend anybody picking this up. Okay, so the first Marvel book that I would recommend is The Amazing Spider-Man by J. Michael Straczynski, drawn by John Romita Jr. I was never a really big Spider-Man fan, so I read some of Dan Slott's stuff, some of his Spider-Man stuff, and it just didn't appeal to me. I didn't really like the character. He was just kind of jokey, and I was just like, okay, I guess that's cool, whatever. He was never a part of my top 10. And then I read this, and I loved it so much. I only had the first volume. I loved it so much that I went and I bought all the rest of the volumes, which I think was 8 more volumes, and then I sent them off as soon as they arrived to get custom bound into this really awesome book. I reread the first volume and the rest of the volumes in this book. It's not a super thick book, but I read all those volumes in about a day. It's such a great Spider-Man book. It really makes you care about Spider-Man. He's more relatable. The jokes are more relatable. And I think if you're going to read Spider-Man and if you're going to read Marvel, this is a great place to start. This is definitely a 10 out of 10 for me. John Romita Jr.'s art is so amazing. He's the only guy that could have drawn this storyline, which is crazy that I'm saying that because I usually don't like his art. I would definitely recommend picking this up. It's so great. Just get the first trade paperback. It's pretty easy to find on Amazon. I don't think it's on in-stock trades, but you could look. Yeah, really great series. When people make these lists, they say to read Blockbuster Comics so that you can you see all these different characters, the event comics. You see all these different characters, and you can kind of be like, ooh, I want to follow this character storyline. I want to follow this character storyline, stuff like that. I don't agree with that, but if you kind of want to go for something that has multiple characters, I would suggest picking up the new Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis. Really good series altogether. I've read all 12 volumes of his first New Avengers series. And I think it was really great. You don't need to know a whole lot before this. It kind of sums it up in the beginning. There's a previously on Avengers, and it'll just fill you right in. And it's all the characters you love. It's Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, even new characters like the Sentry, and some characters that I wasn't even familiar with at the time. It was one of my first books. I wasn't familiar with characters like Luke Cage, Spider-Woman, Wolverine. So it's a really good mix in terms of the team. It's characters you love and know, it's characters you might know, it's characters you don't know, and all the characters work really well together, and it makes a really interesting team. It's a really fun book. It's really funny. If you like Brian Michael Bendis, it's an obvious pickup. If you haven't read him, I would suggest, I think this is some of his best stuff. Ultimate Spider-Man, I hear, is really good too. I haven't read that yet, though. But I think this is really good. This is what got me starting reading comics. It wasn't my first comic, but it was one of the first, and I would definitely recommend picking it up. So when you start reading comics, you usually stick to characters that you're kind of more familiar with, but eventually you'll want to branch out, and when you do, I suggest picking up Young Avengers by Alan Heinberg. It's collected in the Complete Collection, and then there's an event that follows it. Really interesting and diverse characters, people that I'd never heard of before, and they make you care about these characters in like 1 or 2 issues. They're diverse in the fact that like I can hear each and one. Everybody has a different voice. Everybody has a different personality. Everybody has a different motive. And I thought that was really cool. Great writing. Some of my favorite art of all time. Jim Chung is one of my favorite artists. Yeah, definitely would recommend picking this up. It's awesome and really easy to get into and read. The last series I would recommend to you guys is Thor by J. Michael Straczynski. This writer has already been on the list for a lot of reasons. He's just a great writer. He builds really interesting series. His Spider-Man series and his Thor series are so different, and that's crazy that he's able to create all these worlds that are different and awesome, both in their respective ways. The art in this Thor book is outstanding. There's 2 artists, Coppell, and then however you pronounce that name. It's a shorter read. It's an interesting read. It modernizes Thor. It helps you relate with him. This story starts off with a rebirth of sorts, so, you know, I think it'd be very hard to get lost in this book. This was my first Thor book, and I read it pretty easily. Very simple read, very fast read, very fun read. I would definitely recommend it to any new reader. So here's a little bonus comic. It's not on my top 5 for Marvel, but it's the first comic that I ever bought personally. It's the first comic that ever went onto my comic shelves, and I still love it. I read it so many times, you know. I brought it everywhere with me. I dropped it a whole ton of times, and I ripped all the pages up pretty good, and so I had to get a new copy. I read it so many times, and I still love it, and I would still recommend you guys go pick it up if you're looking for something different, something interesting. It doesn't even really feel like a Marvel book too much. It kind of messes with your mind, and I thought it was really interesting, and the art's incredible. And that would be The Century by Paul Jenkins and Jay Lee. Jay Lee's art is really incredible. Every issue is just fantastic. Every issue is truly fantastic. The only issues that I don't like, that I usually actually skip when I reread it, is the tie-in issues. There's some tie-in issues that try and make it so that the Century was in the past with all the Marvel characters, like you just forgot him, which is really interesting. So, there you have it. Those are the 5 series from Marvel, plus the Century, you know, an extra one, that I would recommend to any new reader. Let me know down in the comments, do you agree with me? I definitely think this is a very good list. A lot of these books I started off with, and, you know, I've definitely, you know, I feel like they were really good places to start off with in their respective little universes. I'm glad I started with that Thor, because then reading Walter Simonson's Thor was a little easier. I liked reading this X-Men, because before I didn't even like the X-Men, and it kind of gave me a new perspective. I didn't look at the X-Men as people who go to space and fight aliens. I just saw them as people who gloom around, and, you know, everybody hates them, which is from the X-Men movies. But trust me, the X-Men comics are way different. I've read a lot of other X-Men comics after this one, and they just keep getting better. So, yeah. Next week, I'll be doing the top 5 DC that new readers should read. And then the next week, I'll be doing independent. Stay tuned. There'll be a video out every day. Thank you.